Hello there and welcome to Unqualified Opinions. I'm Marko, joined alongside by Will Byerman and Jared DeHaan, as we're going to break down our final episode of NCAA March Madness Bubble Watch, as Jared's going to break down his last four in, first four out, and next four out. All right, Jared, why don't you get us started?
Okay, so to start off my last four in, I have Georgia Tech, who recently, about 2 weeks ago, my last Bubble Watch, I had them in my next four out, but they've won 6 straight. And I think they just need to win at least their quarterfinal game, which is still to be determined in the ACC tournament. And I believe that will propel them to a spot in the NCAA tournament. My next team is from the Mountain West in Boise State. They've lost 3 straight to end the regular season. I think they need to go far in the Mountain West Conference tournament to have a shot at the NCAA tournament, but I don't think it's out of question. Next, I have Drake, who is 25-4, but they just lost in the Missouri Valley final to Loyola Chicago. They just have to hope for no upsets, no bids taken away from other teams in order to make the tournament. And then my last team in, Colorado State, I think they just need a win or two in Mountain West to give them a little bit of leeway to get into the big dance.
Right off the bat, Mountain West, I think you'll talk about the team I'm really cheering for later, but the Mountain West is surprisingly stacked this year. San Diego State obviously is a big lock. And then looking at Boise State, they have Derek Alston Jr., who's kind of diving down the draft boards right now, but very much in there. My big one there is going to be Drake, because I think if Selection Sunday can't get Drake in, no matter what, as good as they were in all the advanced metrics, as well as they played all season, if you can't get a team like Drake in, and you're going to have some, like, now I'm not even talking like an elite team, I'm talking like if they find some way to like shovel like Duke or some bullshit like that down our throat, and like the mid-majors, you got to keep them in. Like a couple years ago, Monmouth missed out. There, you consistently see these little schools that don't get the benefit of the doubt there, and I think that's one thing that kills a tournament. Who the f*** wants to watch like Syracuse play on the bubble for the millionth year in a row when you can watch like a more interesting, better team like Drake? So I'm going in for Drake Bulldogs here, but I like your list, man.
I completely agree, Will. I think the mid-majors certainly don't get enough love, especially when you broke down, Drake has been a top-tier team in the country in almost every single metric, and then you have teams that can wake up halfway through the season, string together a few mediocre wins, and do decently well in their major conference tournament and get in over a team that has consistently dominated all season. I think that's a huge issue, but I'm glad to see that you at least have Drake in. So, Jared, let's take a look at your first four out.
So my first team out was actually my last team in. The last time I did this, and that's Xavier. They were 12-4 the last time. They've lost 3 of their last 4. I think they need to win the Big East tournament to make it. I just don't see them having enough quality wins on their schedule, but they're currently my first team out. My next team out is actually a team that Will just mentioned, which was Syracuse. I mean, they have a former Illini player, Alan Griffin, who's been playing great all season.
We love Illini basketball on this podcast.
They just beat NC State, actually today, in the second round of ACC tournament. I think they need to make a late run, even make it to the ACC title game to have a shot, because they've beat, I think, Virginia Tech, but they really don't have any other like standout victories on their schedule. My next team would be Memphis, and they need to win the American. The American has not been that great this year. I mean, you got Houston, you have Wichita State, but then after that, it just slowly gets worse. So I think they need to win the American to solidify their NCAA tournament bid. And then my last team is actually the third team I've had from the Mountain West on this list, and that's Utah State. They've won 4 straight, but they just don't have the quality wins they need. They have to win the Mountain West tournament to even make it to the NCAA tournament, sadly.
I mean, I agree with your next four out a lot too, Jared. First of all, not trying to, I don't have any particular animosity to the Syracuse Orange, but they live on the bubble more than any other team in college basketball.
Year in and year out, I completely agree.
I want to take a look at the Mountain West once again, because, I mean, Boise State, Colorado State, Utah State, that's going to make for some good basketball, watching those teams vie to try to get a spot in the tournament here. Colorado State, I'll give a shout out, John Tonje, who was one of the best players in recent memory for Nebraska Class A basketball. But Utah State, I'm hoping that they make it over Boise State, because Neemias Queta, their center, is one of my favorite players to watch in college basketball by a long shot. He's already a draft sleeper on my early mock drafts and boards. They're like Love watching him play. I'm hoping to see him in the tournament. And then Xavier, I think of all these teams, I think they have the most room to rise simply because with Colin Gillespie out at Villanova, there's just so much uncertainty and chaos that's going to be happening in the Big East tournament. Like, it's hard to pick who's going to come out of that one on top. And Xavier, I think, has a decent chance to rise up.
I completely agree with everything you said about the Mountain West, but I think something in particular that Jared touched on was I really enjoy the brand of basketball that Memphis plays, and they're fun to watch. But unfortunately, they do need to win the AAC conference tournament to get in. I think they will, but I think you're right. It's going to be close.
Off the bat, Wichita State hurts them a lot as another at-large contender within their own conference.
So I'm including my next 4 out here, but these are going to be extreme long shots for the NCAA tournament just based off their performances to get here this season. So my first team on my next 4 out is St. Louis. They've already lost in their conference semifinals. Unless for some reason the NCAA tournament committee really thinks they had a great year, I don't see them making in. They'll make the NIT. My next team is Ole Miss. They've won 3 of their last 4. They just beat up Mizzou a week and a half ago. But other than that, there's just not many quality wins on their slate. They will have to win the SEC tournament to make it. Seton Hall has just been a dumpster fire these last 2 weeks. They've lost 4 straight. They were solidly in for me 2 weeks ago. They're barely holding on to this next 4 out. I don't see them having a shot. And St. John's is another one. They had a great end of January, early February, and then they lost. I think they lost 4 or 5. But now they've won their last 2. But again, the Big East is a little bit top heavy towards the bottom. They're not going to have enough quality wins to make the NCAA tournament this year.
St. Louis ends up kind of in the same situation as Memphis, where they had a good season, especially in conference play, but they're hindered by not only not being a conference tournament champion, but also having another at-large team there. So they have St. Bonaventure, who's pretty much all but locked up an automatic bid spot, even if they lose the tournament. And then they have Nashawn Highland and VCU, who's going to be a really big contender both for the tournament. And then I'm guessing you have them in here, but they're another team that's kind of just standing in the way of St. Louis there. And then Seton Hall and St. John's are really just in the same boat as Xavier to a degree. Xavier, obviously, better record, but the Big East tournament, I think it's just going to be so all over the place that I think these teams it's an outside shot by a lot, but with the uncertainty in Villanova and the uncertainty in Creighton due to certain absolutely moronic remarks made by some of their staff members recently, and then just the fact that I don't know if I necessarily trust James Bouknight to be like the number 1 player on a conference championship team. Good player and all, but he's super streaky. I think that Seton Hall or St. John's can maybe play the win. If I had to pick one, I'd say Seton Hall, mostly because I think Sandro Mumukashvili is one of the most fun players to watch in college basketball. So we're going to be really amping up our draft coverage this year. Big draft, a lot of star quarterbacks, Trevor Lawrence, the drama you like to see there. And we just had such a great time with our NBA draft live stream and with the live stream we did for the quarantine live stream we did for the draft last year, that we're really hoping to be jumping in there and putting out a lot of mock draft content. And so me, Marko, and Tim will be working on that over the next couple months. And we'll get you guys ready for that draft.
And that will culminate into a final video, which will ultimately be a live stream of the first round on the NFL draft on Will's birthday, April 29th. So we'll be celebrating his birthday and covering the first round of the NFL draft. That is it for Jared's very well put together second and final bubble watch. Look out for some videos about us covering the tournament itself, and we'll have a whole bunch of ideas and videos coming out here shortly. Again, for Will, Jared, and Marko, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.